Hello and welcome to the Next Steps to Sustainability, a once-a-month conversation hosted by Twigs Co, where we explore what the next steps to sustainability can realistically look like for different aspects of how a business or organization runs. This month, May 2021, we are discussing organizational sustainability and what makes how an organization operates sustainable. Join us on the 17th of every month for these conversations. Please don't hold back any questions. Thank you for being here. Now sit back, grab a thing to take notes with, and join us in enjoying these experts doing their thing.
So before we dive into this chat, please allow us to fumble forward. We are here to continue to pry open the conversation around sustainability and talk about organizational sustainability, organizational design, leadership, and an organization's response and integrations of stakeholder conversations and considerations to help your company or your movement, your nonprofit, your organization be more sustainable. That's what we're here to find out. So who are we? We are Twigs Co. Anna is just to my left. I'm not sure where she actually is on your screen, but she's my business partner. We are a women-led, Denver-based sustainability consulting and implementation firm. Together, we work to broaden the everyday lens of sustainability and the impact it can have by creating strategic corporate social responsibility programs and initiatives that increase the impact an organization or business has across a triple bottom line. We are Twigs Co, and we're here to facilitate the shift in the world we have to the triple bottom line world and economies that we so desperately need. We are here to disrupt. And sometimes that means we're going to disrupt ourselves. So if you find yourself triggered, perfect. That is an entry point to help us find our biases, our blind spots, and what we need to improve. We're not here to run away from bad feelings. We are here to face them and do better next time. Twigs Co was founded in Denver, Colorado on the occupied land of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, Ute, and Sioux. And to acknowledge this, these are our next steps. To use our superpowers for research, collaboration, and doing really cool things with Sydney Jackson Cloxton of Citrine Unlimited and others in creating a cultural experience. Currently planning something for early August with lead ups as easily accessible information that brings light to the history of our occupied lands we currently inhabit. To begin or end our events with this acknowledgement of the history of the land, and to volunteer with organizations who are working on food justice that honors more holistic, regenerative, and traditionally indigenous ways of managing working with the land. We promise to hush, pick up shovels, wheelbarrows, and do whatever they need. To find the story of your land that you're on, text your zip code to 907-312-5085 to learn more about working with Twigs Co. and to determine how much we can do together with corporate social responsibility. Contact Anna and I, and we're going to get this party started. I think Anna's going to throw that phone number up into the chat just in case you want to find which occupied lands that you are currently on. So let's get this party started. I'm going to pass this over to Anna Burrell, and thank you all for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. So before we forget, again, does anybody have any objections if we take a group picture really quick? We're very good at forgetting this part. All right. If you do mind, please keep your camera off. Otherwise, 3, 2, 1. Gorgeous. Beautiful.
Oh, I even heard the snap.
One of those fancy Apple computers. All right. So with that, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you here today and to welcome our panelists. We have Brie Dalessi, if you don't mind waving, with Brie Z Operations. We have Jeff Kinsey with the Logos Group. And then we have Jess Lybeck with Remark, remark.eco. Absolutely fantastic. So we're going to be talking about organizational sustainability. People hear sustainability like, oh, solar panels, recycling, blah, blah, blah. Little do they know that you can actually design your entire organization to be more sustainable in all of its components. That is exactly what we're here for. So we are going to start off with Jeff Kinsey. Do you mind giving us your 30-second elevator pitch?
Hit the clock. My name's Jeff Kinsey. I run the Logos Group, which is a executive coaching and organizational behavior consulting firm out of the mountains just outside of Boulder. I spent 20 years on Wall Street and left that with a whole lot of dissatisfaction for what I had spent my last 20 years doing, but a whole lot of knowledge about how people work effectively together. And I decided to start my own firm to help passionate, progressive business owners, executive directors of nonprofits, take advantage of some of the skill set that I had to have a healthy relationship with the stressors in their life and set up their organizations in a way that are truly aligned to the culture of the leadership team and the personalities of the ownership. So that's what I do. 30 seconds or less.
That was very well done. All right. So Brie, do you mind giving us your elevator pitch?
Yes, please. And Jeff, just an FYI, I'm going to beat you. My name is Brie Zoller. I am owner and chief problem solver for Brie Z Operations. I help small business and growing businesses save money by making their internal operations smarter and faster. Like Jeff, I was in the corporate world for a while, just didn't totally jive with me, but I learned some incredible structures and what a good organization looks like. And I hope to bring that to small and growing businesses as well. Back over to you, Anna.
Beautifully done. Thank you very much. All right. From the office, Jess, can we hear yours?
Of course. So I'm Jess Lybeck. I'm the CEO of Remark, and Remark is an app that makes it really easy for customers to reach out to businesses with their sustainability feedback. And I kind of came into this after watching one too many environmental documentaries. I just realized there's a lot of big problems that need to be fixed. And I was a little bit frustrated by, what can my own personal actions do in the face of these large systemic issues? And so I started reaching out to businesses with my sustainability feedback, and they actually got back to me and promised to pass along my feedback to their product teams or change their operations. And so what we're really doing is hoping to scale the amount of feedback that customers are giving to businesses around sustainability to help motivate and change business for the better.
Beautiful. Oh, so excited for this panel. All right. So Jeff, let's start with you with the simple question of where does sustainability start?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I am not a CSR expert. I am not a carbon footprint expert, but I do consider myself somewhat of an organizational sustainability expert, because I think if you don't set up the organization properly from the beginning, that zero carbon footprint doesn't make a whole lot of difference. When you're out of business because you didn't take into account the true culture of your organization, then you're probably not going to make it too far into the true environmental sustainability space. So I think sustainability starts with the original organizational infrastructure of the firm. That things are set up again according to the real character and personality and culture of the leadership team of the organization. Only then, when everything's in alignment, are you actually in a place where you can be sustainable first as an organization and then contribute to sustainability of the planet.
Nice. Beautiful. Well, that leads perfectly into what Brie is up to. So Brie, as business leaders, how do we know if we're succeeding in embedding sustainability into our organization?
So there's a couple different directions I would go with checking in on how we're succeeding. So one of the first ones is conducting an assessment or an audit to verify how you're doing against sustainability. An example of this would be looking at what our sustainability goals are, what our initiatives are, what does our standard work say, what is it that we're saying that we're doing, and then we actually go and check to see if that's being done. There are people that will do third-party audits for you, which is the way that you can get the most unbiased data. And then obviously you can do self-assessments. You can do second-party assessments where you might have, a business partner come in and do them. And that way you're looking and seeing, first off, am I actually doing everything that we say we're doing? And then the crucial next step after that is to then also do a root cause analysis. If you find something that's not functioning as it should be, conducting root cause analysis, figure out why it's not working, and then fix it. That's one step. So after assessments and audits, I would also say it's crucial to get feedback from employees. If you are, one of, I want to say probably more than 5 employees, you should actually be checking in with employees to see, how are we doing on this? What are you struggling with? What do you need help with? We're trying to do these things. Give us some feedback on how we're doing with it. It's really important that we have a circular feedback loop in order to promote people speaking up. So that means when someone says, hey, I saw this issue, it's not working, someone needs to fix it, then you need to, if you go and fix it as a leader, you need to come back and tell them, hey, we fixed this. This is what we did. So that way they actually know something's done. Otherwise, they might not be aware, and then they're not going to bring things forward again. You can do this also through having like employee town halls is something that I called, or all hands meetings. And then employee surveys are also another great way to know that we're succeeding.
That is awesome. And talk about a setup. Oh my gosh. So feedback loops, Jess, right into what you're doing. So how do you believe that organizations should include their customers on their journey towards sustainability?
Yeah, really similar to what Brie said about including employees. Customers are also really curious about this sort of thing. I think the most recent stat is 41% of Gen Zers fear climate change more than anything else. And so your customers, and especially your younger set of customers, are really concerned about environmental sustainability, and increasingly are looking towards businesses that share the same values that they do. And so I think it starts with setting a goal and actually putting that goal or that pledge out publicly. So whether it be on social media or in a newsletter, and you don't actually have to know how to get there. That's the scary part. Big businesses somehow are more comfortable with this and setting these like lofty long range goals, but it could be as simple as changing one part of your operations in the next 2 or 3 years, and just saying, we know that this is important to us, we're going to figure out a way. And I think just being really, transparent about that. And also similarly to surveying your employees, survey your customers, ask them how they feel about sustainability. What are things that bother them about your operations? And that will help give you some good data on what to prioritize, because as we know, businesses need to make their customers happy in order to stay in business. And so it just puts extra fuel on the fire, especially for any naysayers that you might have in your organization. You'd like to think that everybody, within a leadership team all has the same priorities around sustainability, but they might not. And there might be people that don't want to prioritize that. And it's difficult as a business owner to, spend a little extra time or money on something. And so having data around what your customers care about is really helpful in pushing it towards the sustainable direction.
Nice. Those circular feedback loops, absolutely vital. Which goes right back to Brie, your area of expertise. So in your experience, what would you say are critical for operations management systems necessary to be able to embed sustainability in day-to-day business and day-to-day operations?
So I'll first just kind of start off with, we've got these beautiful things out there called operations management systems. And there's a few different words that you can put around that, but could be an MOS, management operating system. It could be your standards, your programs, whatever they might be called, but it's a blueprint for how a company does what it does. And it's meant to support the whole organization from the top down. And I'm going to sort of approach this with a top-down approach. This ties in with what Jeff mentioned before, of that leadership is kind of at the top of this. They're a crucial part of it. They're also the ones that should be putting goals and metrics in place. So that's the first kind of aspect looking at these management systems, is having goals and metrics to work towards that are related to sustainability. These metrics need to be just as important as any other operational, production, or revenue-driven metrics. They should be held in the same conversations, and they should be considered just as important as, how we're doing business-wise as well. So that's the first step, is these goals and metrics. The next aspect of a management system is communications. So leaders need to be able to clearly explain what the company goals are, why they're important, what they're doing to support the goals, and what the employees' roles are in making sure that they're helping meet the company goals as well. After communications, then you have your written rules and requirements. These might be called work instructions, SOPs, standard operating procedures, standard work processes. All those fun terms mean the same exact thing. That's how work is performed. And what's important is that when we're writing these out, they should all include aspects for not just sustainability, but also quality, safety, all those fun things tie in as well. Something that a lot of companies do by accident is that they make their sustainability requirements separate from their work instructions, which means that they're not equal. So we need to make sure that when we're writing all of these programs for how employees do what they're supposed to do, that it's all in the same document. The next aspect of your management system is tools and equipment. Tools and equipment should be aligned with your sustainability goals. And this is also a great way. If anyone's knows the safety world at all, you have what's called the hierarchy of controls. The first one is elimination, get rid of the hazard, or potentially the sustainability risk. And the next one, elimination, substitution, and then engineering. Those are the top ones to most effectively make a change. So when we're picking out our tools and equipment, let's make sure we're picking things that will force us to be a little bit more sustainability driven. And then most importantly, I say most importantly probably for all of these, is training. So training is important to ensure that everybody has the same understanding of how to perform what they're doing, how to perform it so that they're being as sustainable as possible, and that their environmental efforts are tied into the work that they're performing. So that at a very high level are the management systems that are needed to embed sustainability.
That is awesome. Thank you. I'm glad that this is recording so I can furiously scribble notes later. So Jeff, going back up the food chain, I guess, what roles do company culture have to do with sustainability? And then where does leadership fit in?
Yeah, right back up the hierarchy, right? That we're all trying to get rid of. Yeah, it's leadership that sets the tone, and whether they do it overtly or covertly, if they have any designs on sustainability, that needs to be overtly part of the plan. And if it's not part of the sort of overt or covert leadership team sort of strategy, then, especially in this day and age with so much awareness around sustainability, employees just aren't going to settle for working for somebody that doesn't take that seriously. So that organization will tend to have a lot of turnover as well. So I like Nick's question here about, what do you do about, supply chain and how far out the channel do you go? And I think the critical thing about corporate culture is it has to do with everything, every stakeholder that touches that organization. So if you adopt a philosophy of sustainability within the culture of your organization, you understand that filters out throughout the entire organization, clients, prospective clients, all your employees, all of the partners that you deal with, and your entire supply chain. So if you really take that seriously, and that's become a part of why you exist as an organization, to actually use what you do to improve the planet, then you would look at those supply chain participants and determine whether or not they fall into those cultural goals and aspirations that you have. And if not, then you need to find some new supply chain folks or help them understand why this is so important to everybody that's involved.
Yeah, beautiful. So in speaking to the broader scope of communication, Jess, what role would you say that the customer plays in supporting a sustainably run organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've touched on this a little bit. I think the customer can really be a motivator. It'd be great, like Jeff mentioned right at the beginning, for every business to set up their operations with, sustainability at the core, or leadership, being all in. But the truth of the matter is there's a lot of businesses that aren't that way. And so customers, they really have a voice. If, let's say, there's a catering company that is using, plastic or not sourcing organic ingredients. If 10 customers reached out to them in a week and let them know that they wanted to see more organic and that they wanted to see less plastic, those are things that get strongly considered by the leadership, not because they have a soft spot for sustainability, but because they want those 10 customers and they want 10 more after that. And so, I think the customer plays a role of a motivator and also a champion, so that if they do truly feel heard in their feedback, they're going to be a customer for life, and they're going to be, on that journey to continue on with sustainability, and continue on, with this company through thick and thin if they make a change.
Nice. True and authentic stakeholder engagement. That's awesome. So you were talking about engagement and reducing turnover and all these other beautiful things that can happen. Thank you, Jess, for that. And also thank you, Jeff, earlier. I'm so sorry I got excited about your answer. I was like, oh, wait, this is perfect. So in speaking about engagement and driving this point home, Brie, I love how tactical you are. It's really quite beautiful because I can pick these up and then apply them in my organization as soon as this call is over. So what would you say are best practices to, not just engage your customer, but then also engage your employee in these sustainability initiatives?
Employee engagement, that's a fabulous question, because employee engagement is so critical. It's how it's influencing all aspects of your business, is how well employees are doing their job, how efficiently they're doing their job, how safely they're doing their job, the quality of the product, of their work, and then also, of course, the influence that they're having on the environment. So there's a few different ways that you can get employees involved. And these are important to, first off, gain buy-in. When you involve employees in the decisions that the company is making, it's more likely that they are going to actually implement those initiatives because they had a piece in being a part of it. And then not only that, but another really important aspect of including employees in any particularly operational, directional, if you're changing the work that they're doing, it's important to understand how the work is performed from their perspective. They're going to consider them the subject matter experts. They're going to know exactly how the work is done, and changing the way that they do their work is a very touchy area. You want to be careful around that one. So a great tactic is to include sustainability as a part of an employee's annual goals. There should be some sort of performance evaluation and goals that they're working towards throughout the year, and have tangible activities in there that they can perform to meet those goals. So those goals should not be like, recycle 10 water bottles this year. It should be something that's like kind of significant, a little bit of a reach for them, but reachable. That's the important part, so that they can succeed in it. My favorite way is having an initiative-based project. So this means having, a specific initiative that you're working towards, usually either within 1 year or 5 years, and having employees be a part of that so that they can see how they're making a difference in the entire food chain of the organization. Other ways you can do this is by having committees. You could have sustainability committees. You could have department representatives. So when you have these types of committees, very important to make sure that you have department representatives from across the whole organization. So even if you think, hey, maybe finance isn't really involved in this, involve them anyway. They're an important part of the organization. And then in order to encourage more involvement, leadership should be highlighting these efforts to the entire organization so that employees see, hey, this is important to my leaders. They're commending my peers for doing this. Maybe I want to get involved in this as well. Clearly, it's important to them. So those are a few ways to engage employees in these efforts.
Nice. Thank you. I like that your engagement ideas address Linda's comment about having employees be leaders, more employees step up into this leadership role, which with the proper data and the right culture from leadership, they can absolutely do that to then take advantage of consumer advice to make a more sustainable organization. It's like it all fits in because we're all connected or something crazy like that. Who would have thought?
Wild.
So Jeff, we are going to jump over to you because I'd love to hear your thoughts on, Brie's listed out some really cool stuff and Susan's asked a really good question. So Brie, you're on deck for more examples of goals that are stretch goals, but then also reachable goals for employees. That sounds really fascinating. So Jeff, we talk about sustainability and like saving the world and blah, 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 but what are the upsides of it for leadership?
Yeah, I like that question. My first career was supporting fund managers in the Wall Street banking space. And 15, 20 years ago or so is when impact investing first kind of raised its hand and said, what about me? And there was this concept that if you invested in companies that were really driven to make an impact, part of their cultural statement was the impact that they were going to make, then you could help out the world a little bit, but you wouldn't get much of a return on your investment. And what we learned over time with those companies and those impact-driven organizations was that not only did they not give you a lower return than a normal organization would, but you actually got better returns out of them. So impact funds ended up taking on, this sort of hint, kind of wink, wink. Impact funds are where you make a lot more money. So you fast forward to now, there's, for the most part, everybody's trying to make an impact because they understand that with everybody on board and with that kind of drive, that they're actually going to make more money. So it's this win-win-win thing that you see through the B Corp world that, certified B Corps tend to do very well financially. They have much lower turnover, which is that's typically about a 45% cost to an organization year on year is turnover. They have much better client retention because of the alignment culturally with the organization. So they don't have to spend a lot of money going out and finding new clients. They actually create an atmosphere around them that people want to be part of. People want to work with them. They want to work for them. And leadership, sitting at the top, getting the kudos for all of that, they take full advantage of that if they can.
Nice. Beautiful. That actually, Brie, hold on one more question because that leads in perfectly to something that I think Jess could speak to really well is, so in your experience with Remark, we're talking about feedback a whole lot here. So in your experience with Remark, being right in the middle of this, can you share how organizations can and have handled feedback well, and then ways that they probably shouldn't?
Definitely. I think so. Handling sustainability feedback well is just like handling any other type of feedback well, and being direct and transparent and honest and human goes a really long way to kind of making a customer where they maybe emailed you with their sustainability feedback, frustrated with some aspect of your sustainability. Business leaders really have an opportunity to turn that around and create empathy and also create more investment in the company. I'll give an example of an email that I sent with Remark to an asparagus company of all places. But I try to buy as much organic produce as possible. And, this company called JMB Produce, which is a massive company, didn't have organic options. So, and they also had little tags that if you know recycling, you know that if the tag is too small, even if it says it's recyclable, it's not actually recyclable. So I used Remark to reach out to the CEO of JMB Produce, and a couple days later, I got probably 3 or 4 paragraphs explaining all about this. This is from their CEO, saying we also want to move towards organic, but it's a 10-year crop, and so we're 10% of it now, but we hope to move there. And on the recyclability front, they said we've looked into biodegradable, but we can't find something with that works with hydro coolers and the wet environment and biodegrades. And so if you know of anything, definitely let me know. And I mean, I was blown away by a response that obviously took some time, and so that I've never been an enthusiast about asparagus companies before in my life, but every time I go to a store, I'm now going to seek them out. I will, I'm talking about it right now in front of 16 people. And so you have this opportunity to make evangelists by, really listening and not having all the answers, but kind of explaining your thought process and really where you're going. And also showing you want to do the right thing. I think that goes a long way. And what not to do, I'll say, just being defensive, putting the blame on somebody else, all of those sorts of things are just not helpful. And we've certainly seen that. But I think that's another way that businesses show their true colors through those interactions with their customers. And before I move on, I want to paste a link to kind of piggyback on what Jeff was talking about how sustainability is good for business. If you haven't seen the CEO letter, so Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, he sends a letter out to CEOs every year. This is the latest one in 2021, but he talks about climate risk being investment risk. And so there's just this increased knowledge that sustainability is not a passing trend. It's something that's super core to the viability of businesses. So I think there's money to be had there, and there's also de-risking your future operations by moving in this direction. And right now you can get a lot of clout and engagement and customer exposure for taking that path because not everybody is doing it. So I think there's just a ton of hopefully groundswell around this topic.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Absolutely. And I think that's valuable communication tips for just about any relationship. I think is like, don't get caught up in ego, just be open, admit your faults. So with after this last question, Brie will open it up for Q&A for everybody else. So be prepared. Brie, do you have more examples for us? My pen and paper ready.
Yes, for sure. So when it comes to first trying to figure out what your goals should be around sustainability, I would suggest bringing in if you don't have one already, a sustainability consultant to help you define what are your biggest contributors. That's going to help, like, first and foremost is doing a baseline of where are we at, what are our biggest risks right now, where are we being the most harmful, and then working from the most harmful ones down. So that's always kind of the most logical approach. So I highly recommend getting a sustainability consultant to help you out with that. And then areas where you might develop goals could be with reducing energy consumption, reducing emissions, reducing water usage, reducing waste, some more proactive ones. So those are all sort of like looking in the past. It's what they're called lagging indicators of these are things that already happened in the past. Some more leading ones where you're taking proactive action is looking at, changing your supply chain to be more ethically and sustainably sourced materials. So you can actually create goals around making sure that 100% of our products there are, or what we purchase, our materials, are sustainably sourced. And then you could have more leading indicators with hours that employees are contributing to environmental efforts, development projects, other things along those lines. Then what you do is you just sort of, from those, you start to identify within each department, for example, each operating unit, where are their biggest opportunities? And then beginning the discussion with employees. So let's say you're trying to reduce waste, talking to the employees that are a part of the work and saying, okay, we need to figure out how to reduce waste by X% in our little operating unit here. let's develop a team of folks. You guys are going to do this on the clock with, regular working hours. You're not going to work for an hour on your regular job. You're going, and maybe you'll get a little bonus for being a part of this group, and working together and having, what's important in these groups in particular is that you make sure you have cross-departmental representation, having leadership support. So there should be a leader in the room who's not leading the room, but they're the ones that can approve the budget. They can approve the steps that are being taken. That's what they're meant to do. And it would be great to have an employee leading the conversation who's super passionate about it. Other ways to get employees involved could be specifically around those goals, is saying, hey, we're noticing we need to do this. What are your ideas for initiatives? And having employees submit those ideas to be able to be considered and potentially change the entire trajectory of the company.
Nice, thank you for that. So I know I just said I'd open it up to Q&A to the people. However, we have a bunch of really cool faces. I have it on gallery view here. And so I'm wondering if anybody from the audience, so Brie, you mentioned stretch goals to give employees. So instead of giving employees like, hey, recycle 10 water bottles this year, give them a kind of stretch goal. I'd be really curious from your experience, but then also from anyone in the room's experience of, have you encountered or heard of a really good stretch goal that we could then use in our organizations?
I mean, I can say for myself, and we'll see if anyone else has them. I love seeing the ones where they're saying that they're going to have a zero carbon footprint by X year. That's a huge one. And then getting deeper in with employees of saying like, okay, this is the carbon footprint we're experiencing with this operation. Let's talk about what we can do. If we change it, what are your thoughts on that? So that's, and not by a 2050 goal. I'm thinking more like, 2025, those kinds of goals where we got to work fast to get there, but it's a priority. Has anyone else seen any other good ones?
I know we personally have a goal of being a B Corp by 2022. And so that it encapsulates a lot of different things when you take their test. It includes, community, environmental, financial, all kinds of different vectors. So for us, that was a really great place to start to kind of think about, the holistic of everywhere from where are we banking to, who are our, suppliers, and what is our impact on the world.
Nice. Okay, so we will, does anyone have any burning questions, just by a show of hands? No, okay, that's good. They're not really supposed to burn. Okay, Susan, go ahead. Oh, go.
I was just going to say there's some questions I'm not sure we got to in the chat.
Mm-hmm. I'll move through those. Just wanted to make sure nothing was terribly sparked too much. Susan, did you want to say something, or?
So a thought that I'm having as I'm listening to this and then thinking about other initiatives that go on in the organization. I love the idea of baking this into your operational models and systems, because that's the best way to make change when it's just kind of part of your everyday in the flow of work. I'm wondering if anyone has seen where initiatives are combined. So in other words, if you're going to open up and start looking at like your operating procedures, combining that with other kinds of not necessarily environmentally sustainable, but how is this influencing your diversity, equity, and inclusion inside the organization? Are there things baked into your operations that are hurting that? So I'm curious if anyone has worked on kind of combining some of these things as you open up and try and change your operational models.
I think the one part that I could speak to the most on that with the combination is, and you bring up a very interesting point there, Susan, with trying to include more areas with diversity and inclusion. I could see that being more on sort of the involving employees perspective, that's having that cross-departmental conversation, making sure you have diverse opinions in the groups. Another area that I see quite a bit of, when you're going in and trying to update these standard operating procedures to be more inclusive across the whole group, safety is one that often gets involved as well, quality. It could be efficiency as well, streamlining operations. So those are all different areas where just bake it all into one document. You don't need to have multiple ones, just make it part of the job. And definitely, I think that there's opportunity. There's continually going to be opportunity in this area. It's going to be something where we're updating those standard operating procedures, ideally every year, to be able to make sure that we are advancing with the rest of the world.
This is actually one of the things that Twigs Co does quite a bit. And so employee engagement, you get a fair return on investment for anything to do with education. So if you're educating in some form of field of sustainability against, for example, these 17 SDGs, you're now getting education, but it's helpful if you also track employee turnover or employee engagement, which then you have the triple bottom, a reduction in cost from that. And then if you talk about this properly or do active engagement or education projects where you're doing a sustainability, something that impacts the environment, so you're getting those metrics, and then you get to talk about it because you're out in the community, and then you get to talk internally and then also externally, whole thing. That's actually one of the reasons why we have Twigs Co, is because I saw this underutilization of impact reporting. And I mean, we have to measure the things. So, okay, there are some questions rolling through. Linda, have we answered some of your questions about, let's see, you have what about the community in which your business is located?
Well, I've just been listening to this, and I'm sorry. I know Nick had a question, but I just wanted to sort of make a little bit of a comment and a statement about this. Several things I wanted to talk about here. I worked for the federal government, which is the epitome of a bureaucracy, right? So it's all top-down, command control, organizational structure. The leadership is an elite, has that status of elite, and really hard to talk to them about any kind of organizational change, which could include sustainability or employee health and wellness, that kind of thing. That's sort of where I was coming from. But I think I've been listening to a lot of technocratic suggestions throughout the presentation. And I really believe that, there is, of course, a role for science and measuring what you were saying before. You have to measure everything. But the heart of the people is where you're going to get the cultural change. And I really think that business can be a really great social change agent, but it really needs, in my opinion, to start looking outside of the box and away from the technocratic type of education that most folks get when they're in school about business management or any kind of administration. Because it's very white-centric, and it's even the term sustainability and sustainable businesses, to me, comes from the people of white people, not people of color. And systems change, culture change has to embrace everybody. So if you are thinking of making a change within your organization, you have to listen to all the voices within it. And to come away from being more of that kind of technocratic, I know better, and I'm just going to get my SOPs in there, my standard operating procedures, and instead really have conversations, dialogue with the employees, and look at it as change within to contribute to the change without. So the change in our entire system can be manifested through these smaller changes within business that are not following the same pattern that has brought us to a consumerist society that hasn't really looked at the effects on the planet for all the things that we do to produce these goods and services. So that's my statement. Thank you.
Well stated and very true. That's I appreciate the comment on culture. I mean, because at the end of the day, we're all humans working inside these systems. But that leads in really nicely to a question that Leah has, which is, what do you panel have any recommendations or suggestions on what are some ways that employees can bring topics that people need to hear to upper management?
Can I say somewhat of a general thing about that? And Lynn, I think it feeds in a lot to what you were saying as well, because I totally agree. If you don't flip the organization upside down entirely, you know, you're just going to be trying to resolve existing problems, but nothing gets resolved. So one of the things that I've been seeing happening, especially in the nonprofit space, is that nonprofits are starting to look at everybody they interact with and trying to create boards and leadership teams that mirror their constituents. So it's a big diversification and inclusion movement that's happening in the local nonprofit space. And as those changes are happening, as the boards of these organizations are starting to reflect all of the constituents involved, you're seeing information, questions, suggestions coming up from everybody else that's being drawn into this space, that in a place of being open to such suggestions is really making a huge impact. And I see these organizations changing dramatically for the better, where they're becoming much more effective in actually executing on their mission, much more effective on raising money because of the benefits of that diversification and inclusion into the decision-making process. So to go to Leah's piece, you know, the organization itself can set up an infrastructure where once they sort of feel how important it is to have representation from the entire organization, you have these transparent channels that open up where, and this feeds on so much of the comments that were made, that allow employees through all the different levels to participate as equals in a cultural planning process around the organization itself, so that, you know, all of those voices are included in that space. And that happens from, you know, it does take some infrastructure in order to allow that to happen. But when everybody's open to the benefits of that, then it tends to work pretty well. I hope that was clear.
For sure. And I'm going to jump onto that one as well, Jeff. So another way, you know, and I'm thinking specifically, so I have a background in working largely in manufacturing and very industrial settings. And one really great way that I saw where employees could have a voice was to have, usually it was either daily, weekly was the most effective sort of team meetings where they would sit with their supervisor, their operations manager, and they would have a conversation. It wouldn't just be the leader standing there talking. It would be, you know, it would be the leader saying, okay, this is one topic that we have on our agenda this morning for our start of work conversation here, and then shooting it over to someone else in the group saying, hey, would you mind walking us through this? Or do you guys have any concerns in this area? So making it a discussion. And then ideally, upper management should once in a while be a part of these conversations as well. So I'm talking beyond the supervisor, you know, operations managers, directors, they should be coming out and engaging with employees in those areas as well, taking that feedback and really listening to employees. That's one way to do it. Another way, not my favorite way, but particularly in very large organizations, is having a reporting mechanism for employees to be able to submit feedback that is reviewed by someone and someone responds to it. That's another way, as long as it's actually monitored and there's actually a response that comes through, those can be effective as well.
Jess, have you encountered this from your side of things? Organizations that have those communication chains and organizations who don't?
Yeah, it's been interesting. We built Remark with the use case of customers sending feedback to businesses, but we've seen employees use our tool to send feedback to their corporate CEO and say, we need more focus on X, Y, Z. And we've also seen businesses receive feedback and then send feedback to their suppliers that are responsible for the reason why the customer reached out. And so these things are very, very much intertwined. And I think to Brie's point, as long as Remark is effective because we're sending the email directly to the CEO's inbox. So it's monitored and it should get a response, even if it's forwarded on to the customer service. But as long as you're tracking and eventually responding to these things, whether it be customers or employees, yeah, it's all very much related.
Nice. Thank you. And actually to that leads to one of Nick's earlier questions, which is how much responsibility should we as business owners take for our supply chain? Like how far out does our responsibility go? I'd be interested in the panel's response to that. Don't worry, we have breakout rooms for everyone else too.
I'll just say, I think from my perspective, and I'm thinking about this both as somebody that's been part of a leadership team in a more corporate startup setting, and now kind of representing customers. It's that you start with what is kind of in your house and then expand out from there. And so, I think what would be too hard is to think about, I want to extend all the way out to my suppliers on day one. And so at least the way that, I've thought about it in past businesses is I'm going to, set goals and I'm going to take on one step at a time and I'm going to go as far as I can. But knowing that if I take it on all at once, it may be too burdensome to bite off that much.
I definitely agree with you, Jess. And I would say, almost looking at it I don't, if anyone is going to understand the Shrek reference, it's like an onion where you're pulling back the layers and with supply chain, it is just, I'm going to take responsibility for this first layer. I'm going to peel it off. I'm going to work with it. And then I'm going to move on to the next layer. And I think that, and I think someone asked earlier, what is a sustainable organization? This ties in with it of like, I'm going to take as much responsibility as I possibly can. And that means even working with my suppliers, taking that first layer and going deeper and deeper and never allowing that to just be enough. I'm always going to keep working towards making more of an impact where I can.
Beautifully said.
One thing I see larger organizations, especially some government organizations, do is, they all have, in a way, it's a competition, right, for suppliers, and they'll make requirements along these lines of their suppliers in order to even qualify for the opportunity. And I think, those organizations that have that kind of leverage over supply chains, it's really incumbent upon them to make sure they enforce those kinds of things. And those will cascade and trickle down the line to get, like Jeff Pote said, the entire supply chain has to be in line or it almost doesn't really matter. So you got to start with that who have the most power and influence the chain all the way down.
Thank you. Nice. All right, so we are going to be breaking out into a breakout session right after this. But before we do that, before I release the panel, would each of you mind defining how you think of a sustainable organization? Or some things that help you conceptualize what a sustainable organization is?
Start with that. And then hopefully everyone will forget my answer by the time we go through. So I think what a sustainable organization is a company that chooses to prioritize the environment and their work practices as much as they're prioritizing their revenue. I think that's kind of what I would look at it at a very high level.
I'll build off of Brie's definition. I think we talk a lot about the triple bottom line, but I think it's an organization that's truly looking to align planet and profit and people and community, and then taking sort of solid action and moves towards that. I don't think there's ever, you know, you don't ever get to the top of Mount Everest, right, of being a sustainable organization. And looking at organizations like Patagonia, which is an incredibly sustainable organization, they fully admit in their annual reports that the most sustainable thing that they could do is shut down operations altogether and just not have factories and not do that. But instead, they choose to be a model for other organizations to tread a little bit lighter on the planet. And so, yeah, that's long-winded and not a succinct definition, but that's what I think businesses should be going for.
I guess to build on that, I would say a sustainable company is one whose positive impact that it puts out is greater than the resources it consumes.
Noah Smith, ladies and gentlemen. He does some amazing video work.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Anna. You do amazing all work. So it's just everything you do is great.
And we're not even paying him to say that. Jeff Kinsey, do you want to give us yours?
Yeah, sure. I don't know. It's such a nice moment, though. You know, I took the question to be like, you know, when you're sort of viewing out there, you know, what's the first thing that kind of draws your eyes into whether an organization is sustainable? And I think it has a lot to do with how they view their people that work for them, for starters. You know, if they understand that everybody within that organization is just another human being, just like they are, then they care about those other human beings, right? There's a lot of compassion within the organization. And through that compassion, they care about everything that has to do with the employees that work for them. And so they care about the sustainability of the planet as it supports the individuals and all the way up the chain. So I think, you know, unless the organization is really concerned about human beings, starting with the ones that work for them, they're probably not going to make the first step of the litmus test for being sustainable as an organization.
I had to keep my sound off for that one. Well said. Damn it, Nick. Can always just rely on you for the rhetorical thought bombs. What is it? Okay, so that is, theoretically, our schedule says that we're gonna have 15 minutes in a breakout room and then come back and just about like how we can implement these in our organizations. We're gonna brainstorm about it. And then we're gonna come back and talk about it for 15 minutes. However, Nick over here in the chat has provided an excellent question that does quite pertain to this conversation. So, dispersed leadership structure, are y'all okay with answering this question or presenting this question to the panel and then going in breakout rooms, or would you like to, you know, yeah, cool with it? Cool.
I'm all for, but unfortunately I have to go. I've got to pick up my kiddos, but it was a pleasure to be part of this conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Jess. How can people get in touch with you other than asking?
Yeah, I'm Jess at remark.eco is my email address. And I'll put my website in the chat before I leave.
Thank you so much. It has been an honor.
Thank you. Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right. So Nick asks, are net zero strategies actually effective in achieving sustainable corporate strategies, or are they just smokescreens to allow companies to continue polluting as long as they purchase enough carbon offsets? Put another way, are companies relying too heavily on net and not enough on zero?
Great
Great question. I think all of us, and my response to that would be, it depends. It depends on the organization. I will say I used to work for a consulting firm where we flew every week, and my CEO said, well, we could say that we're carbon neutral by buying carbon offsets. And I looked at him and I said, no, we can't. That's not the same thing. And we're still, we're causing damage. So I think there are some companies that will do that. There are others that are quite genuine about it. So really it comes down to the leadership and their motivation. I believe there are leaders out there who genuinely care, and that they are leaning more towards that zero part than the net part. At the same time, sometimes there are areas where we can't figure out what to do. The solution isn't there yet. So we need to do the next best thing of planting some trees and finding a different source for something. It's still not going to be as great, but at least we're doing something. And then there's all the greenwashers out there, and we all know about them. Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like that. I'll take it a step further on the other side. We're not all there yet. We here are all there, and those organizations that are like us are there, and they're going for zero. But not everybody's there, and some people need to be encouraged to see what it's like to at least move in that direction. So I would hope that the net zero kind of concept is something that's on the curve of progression, and that will start to get people to do things net zero that aren't totally there yet. And they'll learn through that process that it's actually a better way to go. And then we don't, over time, have to really encourage those that wouldn't necessarily do it on their own to do what's right.
Remembering that we're absolutely in an evolution and an entire 180 from how business has been done, for the majority of our lifetimes, to how it needs to be done. All right. Well, does anyone have any questions? Other questions? All right. So what we're going to do, I like to call this a form of functional networking. What is your least favorite vegetable? No, just kidding. So we are going to go into breakout rooms. We've gotten a lot of really cool, really good information going on here. So in this breakout room, let's do a 30-second elevator pitch of who you are and what you do, just so we can get a flavor of who's in the room. And then let's talk about what we've kind of heard here and what are the things that you have found valuable and that you can take away and then actually implement in your business or your movement or I guess your life, if you want to go that far with it. Sure, why not? I'm not going to put limits on you, not in this room. So yeah, let's workshop it, and then we'll come back and talk about it and see what kind of impacts we can come up to make. Vicky Davis has put the B Corp assessment in the chat if you're interested in that at all. And then shall we break the rooms? From this point on in the event, we talked in breakout rooms about what next steps we were going to take, came back as a group, talked about them together, and discussed what we were going to go from there and connected a bit more about how we could support each other. If you would like to experience one of these events live, they are on the 17th of every month. And then if you are in the Denver metro area, Twigs Co hosts several volunteer events in person, socially distanced, all safe, with several nonprofits here in the Denver metro area. So please feel free to join us. Check out our Eventbrite. Link will be in the show notes or video description, depending on where you're finding this. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Anna Burrell. You heard the voice, the co-facilitator, Vicky Carey Davis. We are always here. feel free to check out our website, twigsco.com, TWIGSCO.com. And we look forward to seeing you making positive impact in the world with us.